Hi, all. This is Day and Arry. Welcome to Windshield Time. It is December 2nd, Monday, 2019, approximately 4:20 p.m. You know what that means. 4:20 p.m., y'all. She actually doesn't get the joke.
Welcome to Windshield Time, y'all. Thanks for tuning in. This podcast is a non-technical, fun, informative way to learn about money, Bitcoin, blockchains, digital assets, and crypto for busy parents and working folks who are curious about these new technologies. Day, myself, and our guests talk about these evolutionary systems of money and what they do, because what part of your life does money not touch? And this podcast is not financial advice, and your reactions are your total and complete and absolute responsibility. Thanks again, and enjoy the show.
You got some nice looking waveform there.
I was working on it consciously.
Yeah. The
After
visuals.
Hearing myself on the, been listening to myself, and I'm like, wow, I sound really mousy there. Again and again and again. And I've just been cringing hearing myself. And I don't know why.
No amount of editing can fix it. I just have to let you be you.
But that's not me. It's me in this room here. So I said, all right.
I would say it's still you. All right, Satoshi math. Looks like we are hanging out at $7,327. I checked on the Apple Stocks quoting app. You can look it up with BTC-USD. And in order to turn that into Satoshis, to find out how many sats you can buy with one dirty US fiat dollar, you take the number 1 and you divide it by the decimalized version of that number, the price I just gave you.
Which is 0.01 divided by
0.00007327.
And that equals
13,648 sats.
Woohoo!
Yeah, we've been hanging out at this level for a while. When we go above $10,000 per whole Bitcoin, then that means you get 10,000 sats per dollar. And then as the number goes higher per Bitcoin above $10,000, you get less sats per dollar.
So it's sort of like a 2-for-1 sale-ish type of thing on Satoshis right now.
Maybe.
I feel like in crypto Twitter, there's a lot of angst and anxiety going on.
There
I
is.
was kind of flipping through it this morning, and people are like, it's going up or is it going down? I can't tell. What am I going to do? I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's going to go the way it wants to go.
Well.
All right, so...
How are you doing, Day?
You beat me.
I'm good.
So I'm okay. Today was mostly good. Went to the dentist and got a clean bill of health.
Of course.
There's some issues there.
Oh. Cavity?
Nothing catastrophic. No cavities or anything like that. Just I got to take better care of my teeth as I'm heading into my twilight years, as I like to say. I want to keep my teeth into my old age because losing your teeth is not good at all.
No bueno.
And then I got a little frustrated because Apple products have been bugging me out for a while now. We have 3 different Apple machines, computing devices that are in need of tech support. And so I'm inclined to say that I don't think I want to buy any more Apple computing devices for a long time.
Yeah, it's like 1 in 5 for me right now. Every 1 in 5 is good, and the 4 out of 5 times, it's like catastrophic over and over and over with Apple machines consistently since my first machine in 2014.
So if we are any sort of sampling of the quality of the products that have come out, then probably we're looking at we might be looking at a top in the value of the stock. But this is not investment advice because we do not give investment advice here.
Well, I'm excited about today's podcast.
Ooh. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm really sorry. Really, really sorry. Look, you got Chick-fil-A today.
I was thinking about you as I gobbled down that sandwich.
Oh, boy.
And I even ordered sweet tea because I never, ever, ever do that. And I thought of you, too.
Caffeine and sugar. It's delicious. Thank you for thinking of me.
You're welcome. I'm a little bit anxious post therapy session today.
Sorry.
Yeah, lots of stuff being thrown into the air here. But no therapy for 2 weeks now, so right before Christmas is my next session.
So gonna let it simmer and hopefully resolve on its own, maybe a little bit somehow or another.
I don't know. This is a messy one.
It's a hot mess.
Literally.
It's a hot, steamy mess.
Anyway, today's guest.
Yeah, Neil Bergquist, co-founder of Coinme, who also happens to be a sponsor of this podcast.
Yeah, so really excited. I was actually surprised to hear so many interesting tidbits and parts of Neil that aren't usually exposed in the day-to-day interactions with the team and or seeing him at different conferences. So it was a really nice way to get to know him, human being wise.
Just goes to show you that there are many, many facets to founders of companies. They are people too.
Yeah.
They're not just what's the right word?
Techies.
Techno wizards or business wizards. They're people too.
We had the Korean lunch before with Neil, and he ate everything. So I think how you eat as a person portrays how you live life. And he wasn't shy about, eating the spicy stuff, the curry stuff. He did a really good job of eating all the different Korean foods that we offered him. So I was really surprised about that. Because I thought, sometimes people are a little bit shy about trying new foods, and he really embraced it. And he was cracking off jokes and remember the pool and the turd joke? I was like so surprised that he embraced that because, in the public eye, he seems very straight edge. And but on the podcast, you get to really see like there's a lot more to Neil than what is typically seen. And I think afterwards he texted and said he had a really, really great time. It was just a different adventure and a different experience than the day-to-day
normal day stuff,
of the startup grind, which a lot of these founders are going through. So it was really nice.
And I did go ahead and somehow obtain that Twitter handle, Pool Turd.
Of course.
So it's sitting dormant right now, but that's a good one. That's a really good
Pool
one,
turd.
and I'm gonna keep that until the day I die. Arry is at Arry in Seattle on Twitter. I am at Luggage Donkey. So if you guys ever want to take a peek at our public personas on Twitter, there we are. What do we got for events?
Yeah, so still coming up this week, December 5th on Thursday, we're going to be heading up to the Monroe Correctional Facility.
Jail.
Yeah, or actually this one is
prison. We're going to prison, yeah.
Yeah, jail short-term, smaller offenses. Prison is longer-term, federal offenses from what we learned on that podcast with Leonofsky.
Yep.
Check it out if you haven't heard that one.
Yep.
So we'll be telling you how that goes, I guess, afterwards. December 9th, the Cascadia Blockchain Council, we're headed down to Olympia to do some education roadshow of policymakers. So really looking forward to that. December 10th, we have our community happy hour at the WTIA office.
Last one of the year. Last one for a while.
Yep, totally. So come out and, we can give you an update of how our roadshow with the policymakers went the day before.
And if you want to be on a podcast, I think we're going to be live taping during the happy hour in one of the conference rooms. So if you want to give your best prediction of the price of Bitcoin on December 31st, 2019 at 11:59 p.m., we'll give away a prize to the person who guesses the closest.
We should give away the ledger.
Oh, yeah, I have a ledger. Yeah, that I never used, so we can give that away. Yeah, that's a great idea.
It's never been opened?
Never been opened.
Yeah.
Just pristine.
Pristine new ledger. So that's coming up on Tuesday next week. And then the final one is we're going to be headed to Miami in January 15 through 17, the National Bitcoin Conference in Miami. So if anyone's headed out there, give us a shout. If you'd like to be interviewed on the podcast, give us a shout, or, let's get together and grab some coffee and trade some notes.
Yes, that would be awesome. I can't believe it's December. Can you believe it's December?
2019 is coming to a close. The year of the pig.
Year of the golden pig. Yeah, and so season 2 will be the year 2020 for us. I think everybody likes to count their episodes a little bit differently. Some do episodes, some do seasons, some do
Years.
years. Well, we're going to do seasons and years. So season 1 is 2019, all of 2019. Season 2 is going to be the year 2020. It's going to be a big year.
Woohoo. All right. Well, looking forward to this podcast.
Yep.
Hope you really enjoy it. Thank you to our sponsors, both CoinMe with the best on-ramp from cash to cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. You can use any one of the green kiosk machines with Coinstar at your nearest grocery store. You can use their private client services, talk to an actual human, and a whole host of other different services.
Apparently, there's 300,000 people who walk by a Coinstar machine every single day.
Woohoo.
And if you can imagine some simple math, if those 300,000 people once a week bought $5 worth of Bitcoin or digital assets, that'd be $1.5 million per week purchased of this new asset class. And that's only part of the Coinstar machine inventory that's out there, because they have something like 20,000 plus machines globally.
I think it's like 26 or 28,000. Some very large
that's what
number.
I said. At least 20. Yeah.
Yeah. And then thank you to our other sponsor, the WTIA, the Washington Technology Industry Association, powering over 1,100 technology companies in the Pacific Northwest. Everyone from Portland all the way up to Vancouver, BC, providing one collective voice as we speak to policymakers, investors, and innovators. Thank you to our audience. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share.
And the subscriptions on our YouTube channel would be greatly appreciated. We're trying to reach 101 subscribers by the end of 2019, and I'll include a link to the brand new brand channel, YouTube brand channel, in the show notes too. Would greatly appreciate a subscribe there.
Ooh, we could take the first 100 subscribers and enter them into a contest for the ledger.
For the other ledger?
Yeah, you too.
That's a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
I'll run a contest.
You were in a contest. Awesome.
All right. So 100 subscribers, first 100 before December 31st will get entered into a
Do you know how to
contest. Yes, I do.
Do you know how to find the subscribers of a channel? Okay, because I could not find that. All right. Awesome. We got 2 giveaways we can do for some awesome ledger devices.
Yep. Podcast on Tuesday next week. Come out to the WTI Community Happy Hour and or subscribe to our YouTube channel.
The YouTube channel does not have a custom
21?
URL yet. So that's why we have to get to 101
Go and find
subscribers.
Windshield Time podcast.
Yeah, if you go to YouTube and just search Windshield Time, we're actually on the first page of hits, and you'll see our little red car, and it's awesome.
All right.
All right, so it's going to be a quick music transition directly into the interview with Neil Bergquist. So thanks again, y'all, and be nice to each other out there.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget, again, rate, review, subscribe, and share. Together we rise. You're Pacific Northwest homebred. Tell me about that.
I am. It wasn't my choice, but I'm very, very happy it worked out that way. I love the Pacific Northwest. I was born in Edmonds, spent some time in Mill Creek, and then moved back to Edmonds, went to Edmonds Woodway High School, and then went down to Willamette University in Salem, Oregon for college, and then got out in 2010, did a BA MBA program, and had my eyes sets on New York or San Francisco or Chicago, and right then Seattle was really kind of growing into its own, becoming more of a global city, a lot of huge opportunities.
What year was that again when you came out?
2010. It's
Oh,
pretty
okay.
much the second worst year to graduate with an MBA.
Yeah.
First worst being 2009.
Yeah.
But I was part of the lucky 30% of my graduating class that had a job at graduation, which for an MBA program,
That's huge.
horrible numbers.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just and that I think that's kind of going back to entrepreneurial roots. You know, in times of recession, actually more companies are formed than when the economy is doing really well, because you know it can be hard to turn down a good paying corporate job with all the benefits to go start something. But if there's not a corporate job, people are more likely to go start something.
So I was joking that so you got a BA and an MBA in 5 years, and it took me 6 to get my 1 BS. And the explanation
literally.
is,
Why?
so I have a couple of different explanations. One is I did what's known in engineering as a co-op program. So you do a full-time job, and then you go to school full-time, and then you alternate until you have 12 calendar months of real-world, quote-unquote, real-world experience that you can use as collateral, so to speak, to interview and get a job when you really are
Good.
finished. And then within there, I also did a semester and I did like a semester and a half study overseas in Seoul. And so I had a chance to
Party.
do a student exchange program
I
with
see.
a little bit of leisureliness on the side.
Uh-huh.
And then I was, and then I did another extra semester just to finish all the necessary coursework. And then that's my 6.
Nice.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a one size fits all. I mean, Willamette just had the program. They call it a 3-2, and I just knew that once I got out of school, I wasn't going back. So I was like, I should probably just crank this all out right now because it's a big world. And once I get out there, it's going to be really hard to go back to like an academic setting where, you know, your incentive is to get a good grade and a pat on the back from a teacher. You know, that just doesn't really fire me up.
Right, right. And then I missed my window because I had all my peers who were going back after a couple, 3 years of, real world. They're all going back and getting their MBAs. And so I kept thinking about it, and then I just dragged my feet too long. I tried my hand at a local Seattle telecom startup, and I kind of was like, treating that as sort of as my pseudo MBA-ish. And then soon enough, time got like long, and then I kind of missed my window to get an MBA because the amount it would have costed me to go was greater than the benefit of going and then getting that kick up in salary at the end. And so it just became basically like a real world MBA versus
Yeah.
a school MBA for me.
Which is why if you were going to do the MBA, maybe the Neil plan of the 3-2 you said is the
So
way
only
to
certain
go.
schools allow have that program, huh?
Yeah, I don't know how many have it. You know, I mean, frankly, you can get an MBA in a lot of different ways. You know, there's maybe there's like those leadership apprentice programs that some companies have. You know, you can get some of the simple
Right.
rigor, or going to the library and checking out, you know, probably 8 different books. You can
Yeah.
probably get 50% of it.
Right.
But they really try to create like experiential learning. So there's this whole PACE program, and where they pair you up with companies in the community to do specific projects. And so I like that. I always thought it'd be really fun to merge kind of an incubator accelerator with a graduate program at a university. So you basically, maybe year 1 is kind of fundamentals, because sometimes you don't know what you need to learn, and so that's kind of like here are the kind of fundamentals. Here's the language of business and entrepreneurship. Let's understand that language. And then year 2 is you basically pitch an idea, and the company is formed. You know, maybe after the first, let's say, quarter, and then at that point the university has ownership of the company, and then you as a student also have ownership of the company. And then, at least in my experience, learning really accelerates, because when success is freedom, financially freedom, social freedom, and being able to be self-made, and then the downside is I now have a lot of debt and I'm eating top ramen. You know, that's a spectrum where people tend to turn it up a notch,
Yeah.
versus kind of an academic, which is really a false reality of grades, and regardless of your performance, you're still eating the same food every day. You're still sleeping in the same place every day. But in entrepreneurship, like, all that's on the table.
Right.
And so you're incentivized to learn in that environment more than ever. So if you can kind of merge those two and have that kind of structure that an accelerator incubator gives you, get school credit for it, and then at the end of it, sure, maybe it didn't work out, but you now have that experiential learning to be a better candidate for a job, or you just created a job for yourself.
Right. Right.
I like the idea of creating a job for yourself.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah, let's get the WTIA on that.
Actually, so
the apprentice program, kind of,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounded like you were a little bit libertarian. I'm just learning about this thing called libertarianism.
What is that?
Oh no. So like there's
Just joking.
okay.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Is that a diet, or is that a
Yeah.
is that a vitamin,
Is that a
or is
berry?
that a
Is
Take
it
it every
a
morning?
it's a approach to life, or your framework on how government should be or not be in terms of influence in people's lives.
Well, I
Do
mean, you
you,
got
or
the
do you-
Small Business Association, which as a government program to really support small business owners across the country, because actually net job growth comes from small and medium-sized companies,
True.
whereas the larger companies, the Fortune 1000s, actually haven't created as many jobs as the small and medium companies. So it's in the country's best interest to support entrepreneurs and small and medium-sized business owners. And they have this thing called a Streetwise MBA. So you go nights and weekends for, I think it's like 6 months, maybe it's longer, a year. And they just kind of give you, here's what you need to know. You're super busy. You have a life. You have maybe a family. You have a job. I'm just going to teach you what you need to know. And that's why I call it Streetwise. Whereas the reality is formal education, you probably, how much do you utilize? Like X% of it.
Very little.
Usually it's a
Yeah.
very small amount. So that's waste. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a lot of waste
Yeah.
that, might not have an impact. So the Streetwise approach is like, let's teach these business owners exactly what they need to know. And that's a government funded program. So, maybe not all government programs are as impactful, but I'm not going to say I have a hard stance of whether the government should be involved in
So then-
entrepreneurship or not.
So then, libertarian, yay, nay, maybe.
I mean, I'm not going to put a label on myself. I think I like to pick and choose. I think there's accurate approaches from different. I think we can learn a lot from a lot of different philosophies.
A la carte.
Yeah.
Well, so when I was growing up, I grew up in North Carolina, very, very conservative state. And so I had a good friend of mine, Arry knows, one of my, best, longest known, best friends. He asked me if I was a Democrat or a liberal. I'm sorry. He asked me if I was a Democrat or a Republican. And I said, instinctively, I was just like, I think I'm independent. And he was like, come on, Day, pick a side. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like,
Red or blue?
no, I don't know enough to pick. And so, as the years have gone on now, I think maybe that initial, vast ignorance maybe was where I needed to put possibly myself into more into a libertarian mindset, because it tends to be that kind of, orphan child off to the side that, has a lot of qualities about self-reliance and self-responsibility and, making choices for yourself and all that kind of stuff, which I can definitely identify with.
Yeah, there's definitely things that government should have a strong involvement in. There's, in my opinion, there's some things that they shouldn't. But if they don't, who does? Is that better suited for the private sector or an NGO or nonprofits? And at the end of the day, the big need is organizational design and accountability. I mean, if you think about it, all these are organizations, and some of them run really well and some of them run really poorly. And so where I think government can pick up the slack is they truly have supposedly representing the needs of the people, which businesses represent the needs of the shareholders. But if you can create, what if you could account for climate costs, right? What if that went under the financial statements? Then companies would have to account for their climate impact.
Yeah.
And then they would behave differently. But right now, there is no accountability to the environment, so no company is going to act in the interest of the environment unless their customers demand it, and it actually has an impact on their product performance. So, I mean, I think there's certain things that do need to be accounted for, and without companies doing it, then you really need to rely on the government to step up.
Right. People voting with their dollars. I would choose not to patronize you because you don't have a policy, or you have a policy I don't like, so I'm going to patronize a different coffee shop.
Well, it's exhausting to vote with your dollars. I mean, think how much money you spend on just a daily basis. You really have the time to do all the research and analysis to know which product or service is the best candidate for your dollar.
Soap, electricity, car, gasoline. Yeah.
I mean, even just when you go to the grocery store, do you really understand the supply chain for every single one of those products?
No.
And legal practices?
No, of course not. Yeah. Well, you could just vote with your dollars based on the outrage of the week.
There you go.
Okay, so Neil, Pacific Northwest, educated and born, raised. So how did you get to Coinme? Because you're a CEO of Coinme right now, but how did you find your way to Coinme?
Yeah, well, actually, I was running an incubator in Seattle, and one of the members is now my co-founder, Michael Smyers, and he had this idea for buying Bitcoin ATMs.
Yeah.
And so he was like, hey, I'm going to buy these 3 machines. And I was like, well, hey, we should put one of those at the incubator. 'Cause, you're not an incubator unless you're on the forefront of what's next.
Right.
And before I know it, he needed a lot more help than just a location. And it, struck a chord with me because, at the incubator, you have the opportunity just to see a ton of amazing entrepreneurs with ideas and all these different pitch decks around, disruptive opportunities in big markets and macro trends and how they're going to be the winner. And when Bitcoin came along, it was like, whoa, that is disruptive. Like that is out there. It's a different form of money. It's a different form of a medium of exchange. It's decentralized. And then now everyone's learning about what something that's decentralized and distributed is. It's like pushing all these really big topics. And so it was just hairy and messy and so different. And, obviously, the story of, it was first kind of being adopted by a lot of gamers and maybe people that wanted to use it for nefarious purposes. It was the wild, wild west. And so you want to deploy a Bitcoin ATM in the United States that people can use with cash? Well,
Ooh.
got some questions that we need to figure out here. So ended up going down to the Department of Financial Institutions with some legal counsel and presented, here's what Bitcoin is, here's what the blockchain is, and here's why you regulators need to take a good hard look at this and create a regulated environment so that companies like us can operate and protect the consumer, because this isn't going away. And if you do nothing, you'll allow a black market to exist. So let's work together and be on the forefront of innovation and provide a trusted, safe to use on-ramp and off-ramp and custody for digital assets. And so 3 months later, went through that whole process and ended up getting a license. And so launched the first licensed Bitcoin ATM in the United States.
What year was that?
That was in early 2014.
That's early, man.
So actually there was 2 more that were launched before us. And it's funny, the guy that sold us the machine, he was getting like insane press.
Really?
Like all the major networks, all their cameras, everything. And he told them that we were launching ours in like February. And so there was like an article that went out saying like first Bitcoin ATM in the United States coming out in Seattle. I was like, well, shoot, we don't have a license yet. Like, time out. And then one launched in Boston, another one launched in, I think, Albuquerque, New Mexico. The one in Albuquerque was eventually taken down, and then I think the Boston one might have been Liberty X.
Oh.
And then they ended up pivoting out of the ATM business into the virtual ATMs. And us and Liberty X are still going strong. They're 5.5 years later.
Shout out to Chris over at Liberty X. We met him down at What Bitcoin Is, or Bitcoin Is conference, September 1st this past time.
Yeah.
What is Bitcoin?
What is Bitcoin not?
Bitcoin is freedom. Bitcoin is decentralized.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is immutable. Bitcoin is Travis Kling
Globally decentralized, hard clap supply. He's got this.
Is it money?
He's got his whole thing.
It is
I think
money.
it's money. Yeah.
A new form of money.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to. Well, rather I would say like instead of saying is Bitcoin money, which I would answer yes anyway. I like the other question, which makes people really uncomfortable, is what is money?
Yes.
And then you start asking what is money, and then I think adults get like really uncomfortable because they've been like basically
Conditioned.
benevolently brainwashed their entire life into not questioning what is money. But kids, you can actually talk to them about what is money, and they'll just tell you straight out. You tell them what inflation is. Like, you can buy a notebook for your school. You're in 6th grade. You can buy a notebook right now, but in 2 years you can only buy half a notebook because of inflation. How does that make you feel?
Or
Or
like,
they
that
say
doesn't
money
sound
is candy in the cafeteria, because I can barter with it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kids are so smart. You should have like a 7-year-old on as your next podcast guest.
We did. We actually interviewed an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old
Oh, awesome.
on what is money, and they have allowance from their parents, and then one of the kids, they're mandated to I think it was like save or donate 20%.
Save a portion of it. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
of their allowance earnings, which we thought was very ingenious. And then we told them about the inflation idea, like you can buy a notebook today, but and several years later you can only buy half a notebook. The value of your dollar is going down every year. And they're like, well, that's not great. I need to rethink about how I'm saving this stuff.
Or they just say, yeah, that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But most Americans or adults actually don't realize that's what's happening. And you look at most of America today and they're like, well, for some reason I'm not making more, but I'm able to buy less and less and less. Like I'm having to, I can only afford less and less of a home, and the bank, is charging me all sorts of things, overdraft fees and et cetera, et cetera. And, these finance charges on the credit cards, they're really getting me too. Cause, I missed my payment last month and now I owe another $150. And now I'm like really going down the hole fast. And most of America, and I think Mark Yusko was the one that gave us the stat about 51% of all Americans don't own any stock, IRA, 401k of any sort. And so you go 51% Americans, that's a lot of people that are basically underbanked and underfinanced in this country. And we're a first world, one of the top leaders in the world. And so if that's the state of America, we got some real hard thinking to do.
Absolutely. I mean, it's kind of like, maybe this is a bad analogy, but maybe you know the truth of this origination story, but like apparently the game of golf was created to be confusing so that only certain people could play it. And it was really kind of a classist thing. And it kind of reminds me of finance. Like finance has a ton of confusing formulas and algorithms and the way it works. And it's hard. The everyday consumer doesn't understand the value of a stock or a bond, or what a bond is, or what a treasury note, or savings or cash, or the dollars, or inflation. And some of these kind of the ABCs of finance that the majority of people don't know. And, maybe that's a failure of our public education system. Maybe it's the fact that we're educated through media, and media is generally, motivated by some corporate interests. So the quality of that media could be poor. Not everyone's watching PBS, And so I think that, one of the exciting things, that we're doing at Coinme is really just trying to educate people about what is money. What is a store of value? What is a medium of exchange? What, and these topics such as, why has the income divide grown so greatly since the 2009 recession? And when you hold cash while everyone else is holding stocks and bonds and having things that actually go up in value, and then when you do quantitative easing and how that has an impact on the value of stocks but not necessarily on the value of cash, and actually it devalues the cash, that only perpetuates this growing divide. Then zooming out, looking at developing countries, and you look at Venezuela and Argentina and even Mexico and South Africa.
Colombia, yeah.
They just need a store of value. Something that's
something stable. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's property too. So property is really, really tied to prosperity and just humans' ability to feed themselves, shelter themselves, all that kind of stuff. Because imagine if you don't have anywhere where you can land and sleep and eat and, be.
Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, Maslow's hierarchy, part of that. Yeah. So I think it was, you mentioned golf. I think it was also tennis, because the numbers in tennis, like 15 to 30 to 40 to game. And then you have the sets and then the games and all that kind of stuff. That was a real mystery to me for a long time.
Tennis until I played Mario Tennis. Okay, this makes sense now.
Exactly. Oh, and then the other joke about golf, apparently it's an acronym.
What?
Gentlemen only, ladies forbidden. I bet you don't like that very much, huh?
I don't like that.
Is that true, or do you just make, is that...
I think someone reverse engineered it, But really, I mean, the majority of the people who play it is guys. And what do? They go out there with their buddies and they drink and they have, a 4 or 5 hour, 6 hour block of time, to themselves. Arry's got the eye roll.
Yeah, there's definitely not the prettiest history that we tend to get and run.
Well, I mean, if you consider also, the discrimination. And so, I think Augusta, the Masters, I still think that they have a lot of issues with respect to that word inclusion and diversity, that other word, and so, it's just part of our lives.
Yeah,
that's the opportunity for change. I think that's what, it's amazing. 2019, you think that we'd be a lot further along than we are. But
Yeah, I make that joke all the time. It's 2019, guys. Like, what's the holdup in whatever it is that I'm complaining about?
yeah.
Hey, so let's go into. We talked about a little bit about politics and how Bitcoin can really like take over your, I guess, existential world how you exist. But I was just looking at a tweet today from Balaji Srinivasan, former CTO of
He's great.
Coinbase. Right? He made a comment about he didn't understand religion until Bitcoin. To touch on another sensitive topic, it's like, I think if people ask me from now on, like, what's your religion? I'll say Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because it's taken over so many aspects of my thinking.
Well, and I think there's a lot of deep-seated values that are behind Bitcoin and that whole movement, right? Hence the libertarian comment, right? And have you seen those T-shirts? On every U.S. coin it says "In God We Trust," or on all the money it says "In God We Trust," and there's
Bitcoin
the
we
ones
trust.
that say "In Bitcoin We Trust."
Oh yeah.
Some people legitimately trust Bitcoin more than they do God. And on one hand, it's kind of a pun. On the other hand, people can really take that to heart because Bitcoin is a fixed supply and it's on the internet and it's
Open
visible
source.
and it's
Yep.
decentralized. It's like maybe we can trust that more than this, religious definition of who God is when, some people have been burned by that religion, which is really kind of the human construct of a God. And there's obviously a lot of different religions and perspectives.
And then, so mentioning Balaji here, so you have an announcement about a new team member, also from the Coinbase world.
Yes, we just hired a new chief compliance officer, Antonio Alvarez. He was the VP of compliance for Coinbase, and prior to that, he was a chief compliance officer at Yapstone, and then was a global VP of compliance for Western Union, and then had compliance leadership positions at Visa and Amex. So,
Oh wow, awesome!
Brings a lot of experience. There's a video that was floating around on LinkedIn that was kind of trying to show the impact of having the right talent on a team.
Yeah.
And it was basically 3 professional soccer players dressed in red playing against like 100 elementary school kids that were all in blue. And so it was hilarious. But basically, they're playing against each other, 3 versus 100. And the pros were able to spread them out, and all the 100 kind of ran in one herd, and so they were able to play the field and really pinpoint passing, and they scored.
Find that now.
And I think with Antonio coming on, it's like he gets it.
Yeah.
Like he understands that he's very comfortable with all of the ambiguity that we have to deal with. I mean, you have state regulation, you have federal regulation, you have privacy concerns and things that we need to be mindful of. We have to do an IT audit, a financial audit, an AML audit. The compliance is a big barrier. And so, that's one of the things that you absolutely have to do right. And as we scale, then you start dealing with international territories and tax and regulation and figuring out your corporate structure internationally, which then all ties into the banking and the funds flow and KYC and AML requirements. I mean, that's definitely one of those key positions. So we're very, very excited to have.
I mean, it sounds like he came from not only the legacy financial world, Western Union, which is not a bank.
Yeah.
What?
Western Union being remittances.
Remittances, yeah. So he not only has experience there, which is a huge part of the whole Bitcoin ecosystem,
right?
But then if he also spent time at Coinbase, which is the poster child of early adoption into Bitcoin for people who choose that, it sounds like a really good addition to your team.
Yeah, and a good addition for Seattle. So we're able to get him to relocate from San Francisco. Gotta have that Pacific Northwest
That's
pride.
Awesome.
But no, I mean it's great, and it's great to have. He's just a good example of getting talent from kind of the existing financial services world into the world of digital currency and blockchain. I mean, we're fortunate that we have good revenues and good investor backing so that we can get this type of mental capacity and experience into our world. And it's amazing what can happen with that. I mean, you look at a lot of movements that have existed over time. Like if you have a budget, I mean, you can really get a lot of interesting characters together to really further that mission faster. So it's great that digital currency has a strong business model because frankly, without that business model, it's hard to scale.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So then, reading between the lines, and I'm sure like a lot of listeners might be curious, Coinme has traditionally been the ATM business until very recently, and then you did the very big partnership with Coinstar. And I remember seeing you and Jim at a recent event where you and Jim were walking in. I could really see the partnership between the two CEOs, Coinstar CEO and yourself. Maybe the vision or mission behind Coinme, I mean, just from the outsider's view, seems to be like getting bigger and bigger. And so I see the Coinstar machines with a lot of ATMs, and I think the Safeway announcement happened, and you're onboarding other types of grocery stores where Coinstars are. And now you have the Coinbase compliance guy that's just recently joined, which is a huge addition to your team. Where's this all going, Neil?
I wouldn't say that I have a crystal clear plan per se, but we're definitely being very opportunistic. From a prioritization perspective, number one is access. Consumers need access to digital currency. And with Coinstar's 20,000 kiosks around the world and a trusted brand and having 300 million people walk past a Coinstar kiosk every week, I mean, that is an access opportunity. So we definitely jumped on that. And then the next piece of that is increasing understanding so that people know how to utilize digital currencies to improve their everyday financial lives. And that's going to be an ongoing one. There's so many ways to build awareness and education and engagement. And so that's the next real thing that we get to dive into. And that's our next nut to crack, so to speak. By having a trusted on-ramp, is half the battle. Now it's helping people understand how they can use digital currencies as a form of payment, for remittance, as a store of value, and as a hedge against existing forms of money or stores of value like stocks and bonds. And that's where it's going to be really fun to partner on a consumer level with individuals, maybe even at the retailers, and being able to, what if people at the checkout line could have a pin that says, ask me about Bitcoin? And, like where else is there a situation where, at least some of the market research I've seen, where over 70% of the people in the United States have an interest in Bitcoin,
Right.
but only around 10% own it? I mean, what a gap.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I have an interest in buying a car, but only 10% own a car. Like, you wouldn't see that.
Right. Right.
But that's because there's been a lack of access, and because there's been a lot of misinformation out there. People are very much dazed and confused as it relates to what the heck Bitcoin is. Is it used by fraudsters or scammers or illicit activity? Like, I also saw data that said that 25% of people in the United States don't even know if it's legal or not to own Bitcoin.
Oh, man.
Like, there's so much
misinformation.
Yeah, and I empathize. I mean, if you read the headlines, from a very, from a distant community, so to speak, yeah, I'd be confused too.
Yeah.
Definitely. Why would I touch that?
Right.
Why do I need to know that? And then if you go up peel the layers a little bit more, why do I need a better form of money? Why do I need something that serves me well? So if you look at the product adoption curve, really finding those early adopters, and we found early adopters who not only see it as a decentralized store of value, which is kind of that libertarian type, but also a hedge against other investment vehicles. But then the third one is that remittance market. 25% of households in the United States are unbanked or underbanked. And there's a trend where working immigrants are less likely to keep money in a bank account out of fear. So you have a pretty large cash economy that's looking for financial services that are not predatory. That aren't going to take them for everything they got. And so then they can use us and have a delightful and financially beneficial medium of exchange.
So I have a question. Can I ask a
Can you hold that question?
Okay.
Okay. Just keep it in your mind. So I just tweeted in all caps. I know how much Arry loves it when I use all caps when I send her messages. I said, It is legal to own Bitcoin in the United States of America. And I CC'd the Coinme ATM, Coinme Twitter account. All I said is, it is legal to own Bitcoin in the United States of America, just in case you didn't know.
It is legal. It is legal.
It is.
So we've actually used this term quite often in different podcast episodes, and we're using it again. But just a dumb question. Like when we talk about...
But there are no dumb questions.
Sometimes. What's a digital on-ramp?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Let's see. We can come up with the dumbest question.
Here's one. What's a digital on-ramp? What do we mean by digital on-ramp? Why is it called an on-ramp?
It is kind of jargony. It is jargony.
I think it's an on-ramp from physical cash being like the side streets and then the highway being the internet. So it's like a digital on-ramp. Like it's an on-ramp from an analog world to a digital world.
But if I have my money in my bank account, pick whatever evil power like Bank of America, right?
You could say it's digital.
My money is digital when it's in a bank account because I'm using the online banking, and if I send Day $100 from my evil Bank of America account to his
Right.
evil Wells Fargo bank account, it's gonna be done
I don't use Wells
digitally.
Fargo, by the way.
I mean,
No
it's a
Wells Fargo.
digital-
I'm just making up
digital
stuff.
currency on-ramp.
Okay, so it's a digital currency on ramp. So then, going
So then
from
you can go
this
from a bank to
a traditional
Crypto
evil
custody.
bank to a cryptocurrency digital asset account type of thing.
Yeah, and so that's the on-ramp. And then, the off-ramp
Off ramp.
depends on what your use case is. If you're remitting it, then it would be converting it to the local money or using it for payment.
So I'm going to send it to my friend in Colombia,
Yeah.
and they need whatever currency they have over there.
Yeah, we actually have a partnership in works right now.
Ooh.
I can't say names, but where you can actually go to a Coinstar kiosk, put in cash, get digital cash, so like a stable coin or Bitcoin or XRP, whatever. And then you can remit that to a phone number, and that phone number is tied to a prepaid debit card. And so then we will do the exchange on the back end, and we'll just load that prepaid card in pesos based on whatever the exchange rate is. And so then, let's say you have, let's say your mother lives in Mexico City. She signs up for the prepaid card. You get her phone number, which she uses to tie to the card when she creates her account.
Yeah.
And then in coinme.com, you just type in that number, click send, put in the amount, and then she can go to the grocery store and swipe.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
That's faster and cheaper than Western Union.
It's faster than Western
Well, there's
Union.
a lot that's fast. I mean, not to knock those guys, because they've been around a long time.
That's
and
not very impressive.
Well, I mean,
there's
but yeah,
a
I
lot
mean,
of
it's
things
like-
better than that.
I mean, Western Union, they charge a huge amount too. I heard they charge like 20% or something for
all those
each of their
legacy,
transactions.
all the legacy financial
confusing.
institutions.
And I assume that
charge
this
an
is
arm and a
not
leg.
going to be 20%, right?
No, it'll be
19%.
Yeah, it'll be 18%. No, I mean, obviously, I think that with scale, fees will become even more competitive. But even now, yeah, we're able to be competitive. So, but I do think, though, also from the consumer's perspective, the fee calculations are very confusing.
Yeah.
You'll see, hey, $7 to send money home, but then all the fee is in the exchange rate.
Yeah.
And there's no easy way to shop that exchange rate.
Right.
And so you're like, oh, $7. Like, that sounds cheap. It's like, well, actually, the dollar to peso conversion rate there is pretty bad.
Right. Right.
Again, consumer literacy. They don't know that.
Yeah.
Where's the government getting their back, saying having
yeah.
price transparency. But no, I mean, that's a consumer awareness thing that consumers need to be aware of. And they are. I mean, there's tools now where you can shop around and it makes it easier and does all the calculations for you. So, it's coming, it's there. It's just one of those consumer literacy things that's really important.
I mean, that's one of the big drivers, big pillars of the WTIA and the Blockchain Council is education.
Yes, we're doing the roadshow right now. I mean, basically like 10 to 20 meetings a week. We're meeting with investors and policymakers. And just like you said, Neil, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of fear, too, about doing business with something that's bad or, some evil person that's doing money laundering because of all the Silk Road media dialogue that's out there. Investors are worried about, maybe investing in the wrong company that might be doing something bad and they can't really tell and they're just afraid to engage. And so we definitely, as a community, need to do better about helping educate and being a resource to investors and policymakers.
Absolutely.
Because what is the most worldwide used currency for crime in the world?
The U.S. dollar. It's covered in cocaine. Didn't I tell you?
It's true. It's a fact. The U.S. dollar is used for more crime in the tens, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars per year than any other currency in the world.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, digital currency does fall victim to a little bit of this fear of the unknown, fear of new things. I mean, I remember when Teslas were having those issues of catching on fire. I mean,
yeah.
I don't even know the data of whether there was more Teslas catching on fire then than at another time. It's kind of like shark attacks in Florida. It's like, well, no, there were no more shark attacks this summer. There just wasn't anything else on the news.
Oh, right.
But they did not catch on fire any more than petrol-powered cars.
Oh, really?
No, but you were led to believe electric cars catch on fire more, and that's just the power of the media and perception. But like, just, if the media was just cold hard facts, it wouldn't be entertaining or as entertaining, but it would be more informative.
Yeah, as a percentage, if you took the number of electric vehicles that caught on fire because of a mishap in the design, engineering, or operations, versus the number of vehicles that have gasoline in them that catch on fire, I mean, I think the numbers would be shocking, to most people. I don't know the numbers, but I think it
less.
just
Let's look it up. Let's fact check ourselves. but I bring that up because you see the same thing happening with Bitcoin and digital currency, where what was Trump's tweet where it was like it's all being used for crime and criminals and things like that, and so we have to make sure that that doesn't happen. That A, it's not being used for that, but B, people don't think that that's all it's used for, all it's good for.
Right.
And that's this really kind of hump that we have to get over in terms of mass market acceptance. And that's where I think the next challenge is for the entire digital currency industry, is to really get mass market acceptance. Not just having these niche communities using it and being the power users, but actually crossing that chasm. And I think it'll come when there's that, just kind of as a almost like a milestone for mass market awareness, is that Super Bowl commercial. Who's going to do the first Super Bowl commercial? Who's going to do the
I
first
remember that joke.
national TV campaign? Who's going to advertise as much as fast food chains do? Like, it's going to come, but the big exchanges are making so much money, they almost don't have to do that yet. Because right now they're doing just fine. But someone's going to be pushing this pretty hard. Maybe it's Grayscale on Ditch Gold by Bitcoin. I don't know who it's
They just came out with their second wave of commercials, the Drop Gold campaign. They just came out with another line of commercials. But there was actually probably a couple years ago, they were saying, hey, guys, let's crowdsource 30-second Super Bowl spot.
Yeah.
And literally all it would be is a black screen with 2 words, buy Bitcoin, for like 30 seconds straight, and like no music, no nothing, just a stark 30 seconds of just silence. No. There was ideas of trying to crowdsource that money.
Back during the ICO craze, right? Do a Super Bowl ICO, and the more, like, for every, I don't know, how much is it a second or whatever? So like you could have milestones based on how long it would be for how much money is gathered, and then you could if you put in X amount of money, you get your logo in the commercial or something, and that would be maybe the utility value.
And then if somebody complained about telling people financial advice, you just take the word buy out and you just put Bitcoin for 30 seconds on a screen with nothing else being said or done. I think that would stir it up big time.
There you go.
No,
or maybe
Bitcoin with everybody's logos who like sponsored the.
Oh yeah. That too. Yeah.
That could work. So, I mean, getting that is really important, but until then, I think it's important that licensed and regulated exchanges, really have to protect the pool, so to speak, because if you allow bad actors and money laundering to happen and that blows up, that's going to look bad for everybody. It's almost like you have a pool that everyone's swimming in, this digital currency pool or the Bitcoin pool. You got to make sure people don't pee in the pool. So you need some regulation, and if someone goes number 2, like, no one's swimming anymore. Right? So we got to make sure that does not happen.
Did you see, so I'm going to peg myself in the aging category here. So did you see Caddyshack by chance? Have you ever seen Caddyshack?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, so you remember the turd in the pool?
Oh, no.
Yeah, the Snickers bar.
Yeah. So I actually went on a tweet storm about that, saying that Bitcoin's like the turd in the pool, the Snickers bar. It's like there's some crazy fools out there who go up to it and poke it and be like, what the heck is that? Right? And then they take it out of the pool and then they smell it and they're like, oh, this doesn't smell like poo. And then they start eating it. And then people in the clubhouse are looking at this guy like, oh my God, that dude just ate a pool turd. And that's basically Bitcoin. It's like, we're all eating these candy bars that we secretly found. And then to everybody else in the world, it looks like pool turds.
Yeah. But to us, it tastes like Snickers.
Exactly.
Oh, man. If that doesn't make you want to buy Bitcoin, I don't know what will.
I was obsessed about doing a tweet storm, so that was the best I could do, is come up with a Caddyshack, pool turd reference.
Nice.
That needs to be a video.
Oh man! All right, so I had something else more serious that I was going to say a second ago, but okay. So basically, if you launched in 2014, that means that you heard about it at least in 2013. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's super early.
Yeah, I mean, all relative, right? I mean, I actually consider myself a bandwagon fan because, it was $100 and went to $1,000. I was like, oh gosh, this is huge, like just 10x in 2 months. And so I jumped on the bandwagon. That was just one of the earlier rises. But
Yeah.
and then, what really got us was the guy who sold us the machine gave us the data for the world's first Bitcoin ATM, which was in Vancouver, Canada.
Oh.
Fun fact.
Shout out to the Canadians.
And, yep. You beat us to it. And it was doing over like $1 million in its first 30 days.
Wow.
And they were charging
Holy
a
cow.
10% fee. And
Oh
so
my.
Wow.
they paid off the machine like in the first week.
Whoa.
I was like, okay, well,
There might be a
I don't
business
need
there.
an MBA to understand that that's a good business. And so, Michael actually then just bought 3 Bitcoin ATMs sight unseen right then and there.
Wow.
And so it was kind of more like, hey, so I just spent 60 grand and bought these machines and they're coming to my house. What can we do? And so it almost really pushed everything. Otherwise, what's your sense of urgency, right? When you create a company, sometimes you got to kind of artificially create some urgency to, make you do the hard things.
Yeah.
Well, that was definitely like, okay, we've now jumped into this pool and now we got to figure out how to swim. So
It's like
let's do it.
the captain of the ship who burns all the boats when you land into the new world. It's
Yeah.
like, hey guys, we're not going back.
Exactly.
We're here to stay.
And it's important, I mean, that's, you kind of, sometimes you need to play mental tricks on yourself, when you're going through the challenges of starting a company. And, that kind of analogy of burning the boats is definitely a way to fully commit, because you can't have any doubt. You can't have, anything that holds you back. You got to jump with everything you got and give it your whole heart
Yeah.
and your whole self. So, when you commit, that's really important. And I think so often, like when people start, just to zoom out for a second, when people start new projects or join an organization or a sports team or something, like you got to make sure you're fully committed. If it's an achievement-based type activity. Otherwise, if you're just doing it for fun, sure, yeah, you just recognize then, you're just doing it for fun. But
Right.
if you want to do something, you got to fully be all
Yeah,
in.
yeah. You got something?
Yeah. Can I ask a potentially hard question?
Sure.
Arry.
So, I'm stuffed up. So we recently met with a couple of local Bitcoin maximalists that are in the area, and there's quite a few of them actually. And they were commenting.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. Yes, they are. So they were commenting on Coinme being, one of their hometown favorites, being very focused on Bitcoin. And then the Ripple announcement came out with the Xpring fund.
Mm-hmm.
Does that change your position, or like, are you, how would you make them feel comfortable with what's going on with the investment?
We side with the customer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to say this is the best coin
Uh-huh.
and shove it down our customers' throats. I'm going to think about what are the use cases, what are customers asking for, and give them that. If we're a grocery store and people are saying, hey, we want almond milk, and enough customers are asking us for almond milk, I'm going to start carrying almond milk.
Mm-hmm.
And when we launched the Coinstar partnership, the number one most requested coin was XRP.
Really?
If you look across Twitter and Facebook and all the social sentiment, it was like 10 to 1. And so if we can offer a coin that is not only in demand, but then also one that is faster and cheaper to send, and if one of our primary use cases is payments and remittance, then why wouldn't we? You're still going to have Bitcoin as a core product. So it doesn't take away from that. You're just appealing to a new community. We're a platform that a lot of communities can benefit from. And the reality is when we have multiple coins with multiple use cases that multiple communities are benefiting from, we're able to accelerate our deployment of infrastructure. We're able to get economies of scale faster. We're able to then reduce fees, increase security, increase consumer the user experience, and do a lot more, which then turns around and actually benefits the Bitcoin community. So, it is really an all tides rise, and it really is all about building that infrastructure for a digital currency economy, and having other coins is part of that.
If you were to select a third coin that might be available via the Coinme platform, is there going to be a similar exercise where,
Yeah, I
it's
mean, I think
community driven, or
if you go to coinmarketcap.com and look
Uh-huh.
at the top 10 cryptos, I don't think you should be surprised if you see any of those on there.
Not that we give financial advice.
No.
We're not pitching them. We're just making them accessible.
Uh-huh.
And the Coinme platform is the wallet, it's the kiosks, it's ATMs, it's Coinstar, it's private client, it's IRA 401k. I mean, there's a lot of different products and services that this touches, and we definitely need to make sure that us and all of our partners are on the same page, and that there's a clear use case and opportunity for that. But we haven't announced any new coins. I'm just giving kind of forward indicators for where you can see what our thinking is. But when we get there, it's just going to make sense.
So just full disclosure, I am pretty wide open about the fact that I'm pro Bitcoin. It was the first, and it's the most unique of all the family of digital assets that are out there. And again, for full disclosure, I also have some ETH, and I also have some XLM, which is also known as Stellar. And so I'm pretty open about having those. If
I
you
didn't even know that.
run up on the street and ask me what I have, that's what I have.
That's a transparency.
Actually, I never even.
Well, I mean
bothered to
that's how non like material it is to our existence. It's like I don't go around trying to, as the crypto bros like to say, shill stuff.
Oh,
I don't
God.
shill. 'Cause shilling is fraud.
Yes.
And so it's like if I have it, I have it. If I don't, I don't. And so I'm not here to like tell anybody else, like you said, Neil. I mean, I'm not here to tell anybody else what they should have, but if they choose, if a person does a little bit of self-education, hopefully getting education from the right sources, and they choose to pick up some, 1, 2, 3, XYZ, ABC, whatever it is, flavor of the day, then it's their choice and
Right.
it's their responsibility. And if it goes up, awesome. If it goes down, I'm sorry, you made the wrong choice. I mean, that's all there is, really.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee of anything going up. I think it's still buyer
even
beware.
Bitcoin.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, don't
Yeah.
you can don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
So I think that's always important to remember that, regardless of whatever the investment is, it doesn't, like, Bitcoin aside, just standard advice.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't put your eggs in one basket. So, yeah, and I think that from a community perspective, keep in mind, we're very much on the front lines for everyday consumer adoption. And so, yes, there's definitely people that are like, I want Bitcoin. Where's the easiest way to buy it? Okay, great. I'm going to go to a kiosk. There's also people that are saying, I don't care what it is you're schlepping. I just want to send money home faster and cheaper. And so
right.
then it's more of like, okay, how do we create a user experience by leveraging digital currency in order to enable that? And so maybe it's Bitcoin, maybe it's not. And
That's
that's how you go kind of more mainstream, because you have people that just want a better medium of exchange.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, yeah. So the joke or the meme that went around is like internet schminternet. I don't care what you're calling us, trying to label us. We're Amazon.com. This is like mid 90s. We sell books online, and all I want is to give you, the customer, the best absolute customer experience that I can
Exactly.
possibly give you.
Yeah.
And then, the chips fall where they do.
To be honest, I think that if we're talking like mainstream consumer level adoption, I think that it's not going to look the way it looks today. I don't necessarily believe that everyone's going to have a defined wallet address. The companies like us are going to build interfaces where it's phone numbers and email addresses, because that's what everybody knows. Send to phone number, send to email. It's not send to a wallet address, but then do a Satoshi test, make sure it's the right amount, and then have that person get back to me, and then send them the full amount and spend like days.
Is that what it's called,
on
the
this,
Satoshi test?
Well, you can do a Satoshi test to verify whether it's your wallet or not. So usually,
Oh, I didn't know,
that's
but I didn't
kind of
know
an
it's called the
OTC
Satoshi
term.
test.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an OCT center. Okay, I've never used an
but
OTC.
it can be used for
Yeah.
doing a large payment
Yeah, yeah.
or remittance. But
Oh, that's the first time I ever heard of that. That's funny.
yeah, so verify you own that wallet. But I mean, so I just think it's going to look different than it looks right now.
Yeah, yeah.
We're still early. It's still dial up, so to speak, and consumers don't care about the CSS or the HTML or, the back end. All they care about is the user experience. All they care about is writing a letter to my grandpa, and clicking send and knowing that it got there, whether it's AOL or Gmail.
There's a number of actual newer products coming out online that are what I would term like maybe second layer, third layer, obfuscation, making the Bitcoin itself 10 times easier to use by using emails and telephone numbers, basically.
Yeah. So then on that note, another thing that I've noticed, getting to know the Coinme office and team and the suite of products that you offer, is that you actually have a whole giant team of customer service reps working there like day in, day out. And you have like the chat box there, and then you have email and you have phone numbers and you have like private client services. So like I'm seeing these guys like getting texts from their customers. And so you're taking a totally different approach to customer service than is typically done in this crypto digital asset world. Because I know like there are other I will not name them, digital asset exchange companies that are really, really hard to work with in terms of customer support. Why are you doing it your way? Because I know operationally that's very expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's Bitcoin for the rest of us. There's certain people that will go to a website and, be able to figure everything out and, wire money and take a position. There's other people that still want to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
And so we've invested heavily in a customer success team, and we give you a phone number you can call,
Which is
even
crazy.
just on the homepage. So you could say that that's operationally inefficient, but you can also say it's a customer touch point that gets us a customer for life, and that's the opportunity with it. And so you kind of look at us as a business. We provide a familiar transaction experience. And so that appeals to a different part of the market than a pure digital one. And a familiar one is at an ATM, right? It's something you trust. It's that physical representation of this magic internet money. So you create trust in a market where there's not much of it. And then you can call somebody. Well, you can imagine how uneasy people feel when they, for example, send Bitcoin and they don't see it at the receiving address for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Where is it? And or I purchased and I don't see my balance, or I forgot my password, or I think that my kid got in my account, and teaching them what a block explorer is to track the movement and, just simple things like that. I mean, it's money. And so being able to give them a trusted partner in that experience, and especially for those, and the majority of our customers are first-time digital currency purchasers, giving them some hand-holding out of the gates is important. And then they become very much self-service. They understand it. They figure it out. It's mostly a customer education department.
Customer education department. Oh, I love that.
And so we actually think of it almost more as a marketing expense than as just an operational expense.
I was just going to say, so Zappos. So they were purchased by Amazon.com, Tony Hsieh.
Tony Hsieh, yeah.
They bought him for $1 billion.
And he does a wonderful job.
And basically all of the non-scalable customer service that he was doing for Zappos to provide amazing, stellar, amazing customer service.
Yeah.
He said that exact same thing. He's like, yeah, it's like, some companies might classify the cost and expense in, a different category, but we truly view it as a marketing expense because when we give a great customer experience to someone, they go out and tell their friends, and then they keep telling their friends. And so it is a positive feedback loop that we're creating with that touch point of, great customer experience, the first thing.
Totally. And happy customer service reps, deliver happy experiences. And so we sent our customer service manager to one of those Zappos boot camps.
Awesome.
So
awesome.
he's actively pulling back, some of those kind of cultural philosophies into the team. So, I mean, it's we still have tons of opportunity. There's a lot more fun things we can do, different mediums of communication, texting, intercom, chat.
Yeah, it's amazing.
We're offering bilingual support as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you can call us in Spanish. So You think about there's definitely parts of the community just within the United States that has been left behind because you kind of have this Silicon Valley view of the world that everything's digital and we're just going to appeal to digital customers. Well, let's not leave people behind and let's go after maybe those what they deem as maybe less attractive markets, but we deem as core, and make sure that we can identify and be able to communicate as such so that we can be that trusted on-ramp for the rest of America.
Cool. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I really think that's a really great differentiator for Coinme and this digital asset, digital exchange world that we're a big part of in the swimming pool.
I mean, I'm still teaching my parents how to do mobile banking, Not everyone's 100% digital yet.
Right.
But if you think of it from a customer acquisition strategy for us, we help consumers get in not only to digital money, but to digital currency. And then they become a Coinme customer. So as we start deploying more digital features, they're quicker to adopt those because they're already in the Coinme ecosystem. So you got to meet customers where they're at.
Yeah.
Banks are still operational. They're still brick and mortar financial institutions.
Right.
A kiosk is a natural next step, and then obviously the phone after that. But we can capture a large portion of the market with the kiosks and then pull them into Coinme Mobile and be able to serve them as a digital customer.
So can I ask one last non-sexy question?
Only if it's a really bad question.
A dumb question. There are no dumb questions.
Yeah, so at least, in the small community that we're a part of right now with Bitcoin and blockchain community, the crypto asset, digital asset world, the idea of regulatory clarity is one that's being asked for and talked about quite often, and especially with Facebook and their hearings that have been publicly streamed recently. The crypto Libra hearings, people are hearing more about digital assets. And then there's a lot of complaints that the United States is a little bit behind Singapore, for instance, or Malta in terms of digital clarity. But what I'm hearing from Coinme is that you actually spent the last several years doing all the licensing and regulatory work, even in Washington State with the DFI, Department of Financial Institutions. What's that been like? Has it been scary? Because I've heard both sides
Expensive.
of the expensive.
Not scary, expensive.
What does that mean?
I mean, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time hiring very expensive people, to interpret. It's a lot of communication. Federally, you register with FinCEN as an MSB, have an AML program, and then you have to go state by state to figure out how they interpret what you're doing. And every state has their own powers that they can enact to determine whether you can operate there or not. Some states get it, some states don't. And that's kind of unfortunate. For example, there's a state, I won't say which one, doesn't consider Bitcoin a permissible investment.
Oh.
So what that means is if you're going to have a Bitcoin liability, meaning that you provided custody of Bitcoin, then you need to have it backed by a true permissible investment, being dollars.
Oh.
And so if we operate in this state and we hold, let's say, $1 million of Bitcoin on behalf of our customers, that means we have to have $1 million of cash sitting in a FDIC insured bank account backing up that Bitcoin.
Oh, wow.
And so even though we hold that $1 million of Bitcoin, since it's not considered a permissible investment,
wow,
it shows up as a zero asset.
Oh.
And so we have to then bring in $1 million of cash in order to hold Bitcoin for people in that state.
Wow.
So that sounds like compliance to banking laws, legacy banking laws, not
No,
like
quite the opposite, because if we were a bank and you deposited dollars, I could then take those dollars and lend them out.
Oh, that's right, that whole thing.
I would
Yeah.
have even less assets on my balance sheet if we were a bank in that state. Whereas if it's Bitcoin, I not only need to hold 100% of the Bitcoin, I also need to hold 100% of dollars in addition to the Bitcoin.
Seems
So
like
then it's worse than the legacy banking laws
2 to 1.
because they're trying to pick on Bitcoin and its sister currencies specifically somehow.
Yeah, you could argue that it was intentional, but I think it's more just a fact that they don't get it yet. I don't think that it's intentional per se. I think that it's really just the fact that they haven't updated their old 1980s
they
money
need some
transfer
updating.
laws.
So that podcast, that little short interview that Molly Wood did
Yeah.
with the chair of the FDIC.
Yeah.
So she was saying, the biggest challenge we have right now is that we have 19th century laws and regulations with 20th century people operating in a 21st century technology environment.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the SEC, what is it, 1933
Yeah.
was
Somewhere around then, yeah.
the landmark laws that still determine what's the securities or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Things have changed. A lot of those examples that they used then, a lot of them do still hold true today. But, with technology and the internet, and then this concept of decentralization, and then decentralized money, and then being an exchange of that decentralized money, whoa, I mean, that's a lot to catch up on. And, I think that one of the pros and cons of our legislative system is that it's adaptable and it can evolve, but the con is that it's very slow. And so it just takes time.
Yeah.
And from an entrepreneur's perspective, that's risky because I don't have a lot of time. I'm burning cash every month, and I'm personally liable for all of these transactions. So
Right.
I hope I interpreted these laws correctly, even though the law may or may not exist yet. And so that's the risk you take. And, I feel comfortable with our position, 100 times more now than I did 5 years ago, just because I have clarity. And there's a lot of large industry players that have, can afford to have an office in Washington, D.C. and lobby and communicate and advocate. And fortunately, there's organizations like the Coin Center that does a lot of that kind of thankless work to ensure that legislators are aware. Wyoming's going to come out in front as a state that's really pro-blockchain, and we're looking at that. There's obviously countries like Malta that are going all in on it. Japan, 2014, was the first country to have federal guidance for digital currencies, so
True.
a lot of big money's gotten into it over there.
Japan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Japan. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
I had no
Japan's Central and South America. They're looking at it. A lot of the central banks and governments are looking at it, and they're calling the lawyers in Tokyo that work with the FSA on licensing requirements because they're saying, "Hey, you guys figured out how to do this from a federal perspective. How do you do it?"
Yeah.
And then Japan obviously has had a lot of hacks too, so they've evolved and updated it, and it's pretty progressive. They now have eKYC procedures. I mean, to be fair, it was pretty archaic initially. I mean, one of the requirements was physical KYC. So when you created an account, they'd mail a postcard to your house, and then you had to type in the code on that postcard, which is why Bitcoin ATMs didn't exist. I mean, they did exist. It was just a horrible customer experience because you go to the machine, create an account, and then say, "Okay, come back in 3 to 5 days with your postcard." And I was like, "What?"
But I want to buy drugs right now. I can't wait 3 days.
So, and it's because you have a lot of tourists, you have a lot of Chinese, they want to make sure you're actually living in that country and that you have a physical mailing address. But they did come out recently with eKYC, which is what we do here in the United States, electronic document verification, face to ID matching. And so they're getting there. But yeah, no, kudos to them. I think, I don't know if we will see anything federally from the United States other than just making sure that you're not laundering money and abiding by those standards. And that's, probably good enough.
But if you take a cue from the big banks, I mean, you just launder the money and then the fines you just pass on to your customers anyway. That's what they do. That's what they do.
There have been examples of that. That is for sure. There's some. I mean, there's yeah.
They
If you definitely want
billions of dollars in fines. Where's that money coming from?
I know
It's coming from their customers.
What was it? The UBS example of where their compliance department would purposefully put in different names, even so it wouldn't match people on the sanctions list, and then they got caught and agreed to pay a fine, but then they didn't disclose exactly what happened until 6 months later, but they had already agreed on the fine amount, so then that they weren't able to get charged with anything more, and they admitted complete fault. I mean, it happens.
Money laundering is so global, so ubiquitous among the existing financial institutions. I mean, so apparently any financial services company or the financial services industry is the most regulated in the world. And so it's amazing that maybe money laundering should actually be called the oldest profession in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of people that do it. And that's why we have to be very, very stringent to ensure that it doesn't happen. So that's kind of one of those peeing in the pool examples. If someone does that and uses Bitcoin and uses a large exchange to be successful, then yikes, we can't let that happen. Because then for all the honest consumers that are looking for a better store of value or a better form of money or medium of exchange, it ruins the party.
Right.
Because everyone hurts. UBS passed those fines on to all their customers,
Oh,
not
yeah.
just their illicit ones. And so, it's something you got to be proactive about. I was talking with a guy that works at the Bangor submarine base over on the peninsula, and his job was to be in charge of all the torpedoes that get loaded into the submarines.
Wow.
And obviously, if you're handling a torpedo, like, you are dialed in on the temperature, the environment, who's touching it, who's around it, where's it's going, where's it's been, how's it being tracked, what's the perimeter security, like, everything. And that's honestly how we think about money. Our compliance team is thinking about, okay, where'd this money come from? Who did it come from? When did it come from? How much was it? What was the context? Who is that person? Where'd they get their money to get this money? And then where is it going? Where is it sitting? Where is it stored? And because money can be used as ammo. And that's why FinCEN is very much concerned about money laundering, because you could be providing the ammo for the next 9/11. And you don't want your hands on that.
Right.
And the reality is there are people trying to move ammo around through companies in the United States. And some companies honestly miss it. Some companies are just don't invest in compliance enough. And so that it's kind of like they are guilty by just
Ignorance.
not being competent.
Yeah.
But we try to be A+. We want to make sure that we're tracking everything and are on top of everything as an organization.
Cool. It's been really interesting, Neil. Thank you for sharing all the insights.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming in. This is awesome.
Yeah, this is fun. Kudos to you two. Glad you're doing this.
Thanks, man.
So if our listeners want to learn more about Coinme or follow you or learn more, where should they go?
Yeah, Coinme.com, @Coinme on Twitter, and Coinme on Facebook. We keep track of the content. We try to provide as much educational pieces of content as we can to help people understand and utilize the power of digital currency.
Cool. And thank you to our listeners for the opportunity to share. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share this podcast.
Review, subscribe, share.
If you love this episode, don't forget to follow Coinme at Coinme on Twitter, Facebook, and also their website, coinme.com.
LinkedIn too. LinkedIn is the old one. In the social media circles, it's the old one, old slow one.
Or is it where the old people are?
Or
Maybe so.
where all the professionals
I'm there,
are.
so yeah.
Rate, review, subscribe, and share. Thank you for listening.
All right. Be nice to each other out there, y'all. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hi, y'all. This is Jenny from Charlotte. None of the statements or opinions expressed in this podcast by the guests or its host is to be taken as financial or legal or psychological or dietary advice or a solicitation of any kind to participate in a conservative or risky or speculative financial instrument that may or may not require accredited investor status as defined by either the Securities and Exchange Commission of the United States of America or independent thought and rational thinking from the laws of humanity. By listening, you acknowledge that the hosts Arry and Day and their guests are not financial advisors or legal scholars of any kind, but only humans and not sentient, intergalactic alien life forms. All statements made in this podcast by any living or dead or unborn or zombie or robotic entity in the past, present, or future of the space-time continuum of the known universe are purely ironic or coincidental thoughts and opinions. Moments of sarcasm, sadness, education, glee, entertainment, or any other emotion found in this podcast are fully your responsibility and reaction that may or may not be intended for the listener in any way, shape, or form. Mature adult discretion is strongly advised. Thank you for listening.
I was listening to Seb singing Albuquerque. It's my turkey over and over.
Oh boy.
It's so cute.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah. Though we cut off each other a lot. in the intros, last two intros.
Who? You, me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know I cut you off a couple of times, and I apologize for that. I apologize.
It's very abrupt. So we should be a little more conscious of that.
And so, yeah, just goes to show that I got nothing to say. I got nothing else to say.
You get the box, but not Rob. Christy.
I like the ambiance here. You know,
We had
It's
Christy
kinda-
Mineham in here, and she was like,
time is irrelevant in this room. That's why it's the time machine, or you can call it Windshield Time Machine.
Time machine.
That can be the after hours version.
Well, we're going to do an after-hour version, trust me.
Oh, it's called Windshield Time. Drinking, not driving.
It's called Drinking, Not Driving, Windshield Time.
Drinking, not driving. Windshield
We're
time.
drinking, you're driving, windshield time.
Oh, yeah.
We drink so you don't have to.
Yeah. We're drinking on your behalf because you poor slog is like behind.
Arry, check, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Day. You.
All day
Okay.
long. All day, yesterday, tomorrow,
All
Monday.
day, you.
So every time we do this, we kind of have to like.
All right, so how about them Seahawks, huh?
Oh, did you
Barely
watch the game
squeaking
yesterday?
by. I did.
How was it? I have no idea.
It's just. I think that the Seahawks are one of the most difficult teams to be a fan of,
Really?
and because you're always on the. I mean, at the same time, it is one of the more rewarding teams in the sense that they're always kind of in it, and they seem to pull it off and come away with a win. I mean, they're 7-2 somehow. They don't seem to be.
They
They're
leave
just
you
not-
on
they're
the
not
edge of your
consistently
seat.
Dominant, yeah.
Yeah. It's the high-ish drama that
It's like a startup, you know.
They can
just
sell.
on the edge of your seat. You may or
Edge
may
of
not
your
make
street.
it. You know, you never know until the 2-minute drill in the fourth quarter.